So here's a question for you. How do you get a crowd to listen to your message? I mean, especially a crowd on a busy summer beach, right? They're way more interested in having fun than hearing a sermon. It's a classic problem, but one missionary had well, let's just say a pretty unconventional solution.
Yep, you heard that right. His idea was to stage a fistfight. He and another guy would start this fake argument that just keeps escalating until fists are flying. Of course, a crowd would gather to see what's going on, and right when it looked like things were getting really out of hand, a preacher would just pop up on a box and boom, captive audience. Creative? For sure. Effective? Absolutely. And honestly, it tells you everything you need to know about the man at the center of our story.
Today, we're going to dive into the incredible lives of Ron and Joyce York. They were a couple whose legacy in Asia was built on a foundation of pure grit, amazing creativity, and just an unshakable faith.
To really understand Ron York, you have to go back to where his journey truly began. And it wasn't in a church, but in the crucible of war. See, he wasn't born a missionary, he was forged into one.
Okay, just look at this timeline. At only 18 years old, his family life is falling apart, so Ron joins the Marines and gets sent straight to the front lines in Korea. He sees his high school buddies die in combat. Then he himself gets wounded by a grenade. And it's there, on that hospital ship, all alone and thinking about his own mortality, that something just profound happens. And get this, at the very same time, his father, who was a brand new Christian himself, is back home in Idaho, praying like crazy for his son's safety and salvation.
That single, intensely private moment, with no preacher, no fanfare, nothing. That was the turning point. It completely redefined his entire life. The Marine who went to war just to escape his past had found a brand new mission that would define his entire future.
And so when Ron returned to Asia, he wasn't a soldier anymore, but a missionary. And he definitely didn't use a traditional playbook, no way. He wrote his own, and it was filled with some of the most creative evangelism strategies you will ever hear about. Now, this is what's really fascinating to me. It shows his incredible entrepreneurial spirit. We already talked about the staged fight. But look at this other stuff. In the Philippines, he sold Great Dane puppies to connect with businessmen. He ran a coffee house as a kind of ministry hub. And to get into countries that had restrictions on missionaries, he became a legitimate gem trader. This whole approach is sometimes called being a tent maker, using a professional trade or business as a natural platform for your mission instead of just showing up as a missionary. But Ron's story isn't just about these bold, clever strategies. It's also a really deep, personal journey of love, devastating loss, and somehow the emergence of new hope. While they were in Korea, right at the height of their early ministry, Ron's wife, Betty, got a terrible diagnosis, breast cancer. They had no choice but to return to the United States in 1965 so she could battle the disease. As Betty's health got worse, the family was just struggling to cope. So the Navigators, his mission organization, sent a nurse to help them out. Her name was Joyce Strand, and she came to dedicate herself to serving the family through this impossibly difficult time. For 3 years, Joyce was right there, providing constant care and support. But in January 1968, Betty's long and painful battle with cancer finally came to an end. But that wasn't the end of the story. Later that same year, Ron and Joyce were married. And out of this immense loss, a new partnership grew, one that would see them return to Asia together to continue the work that Betty had helped begin.
And this new partnership, it would really define the next phase of their work. Because, you see, the Yorks' core mission was never about building their own legacy. It was all about raising up local, national leaders to carry the work forward themselves.
This photo is just fantastic. It shows the very first generation of Korean leaders that Ron personally mentored. You can see Ron right there in the middle, but he's surrounded by the men who would go on to lead the Navigator work in Korea themselves, guys like Paul Yu and John Ha. This right here, this was his vision in action. And his influence wasn't just in one country. Here he is with the Pacific Area's leadership team, a whole group of pioneers responsible for ministry all across the continent. Ron wasn't just some maverick on a beach. He was a key strategic leader helping to shape a movement across Asia. So what does all this work actually add up to? The staged fights, the gem trading, all those years of personal mentoring. What does that legacy really look like?
Well, it looks like this. This is the Busan Disciple Makers Conference in 1990. It was a massive gathering that represented the culmination of decades of work that started with Ron and just one Korean man who happened to speak English. From one-on-one mentoring to this. 750 people attended that conference, and that number, it represents the incredible power of spiritual multiplication. That was the core idea that drove Ron's entire life. You invest deeply in a few, who will then invest in a few more, and on it goes.
After decades in Asia, family needs eventually brought Ron and Joyce back to America. But for a pioneer like Ron, the mission is never really over, right? It just changes location.
And I absolutely love this quote. In his later years, he wasn't leading international teams anymore. He was just meeting a group of old-timers, none of them religious, at the local Silver Spoon restaurant. He was back to the very beginning, to the same core principle, just building genuine friendships, one person at a time.
From staging a fight on a Korean beach to sharing coffee in an Idaho diner, Ron York's life really makes you ask, what does it truly mean to have an impact? Is it about the big, visible moments, or is it about the quiet, consistent investment in the people who are right in front of you?